All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it's finally that week. It's the spooky season. It's Halloween week. We have some rivalry games. We have some very scary matchups for you. But the man who believes that he could have made Halloween in 19 days instead of John Carpenter making it in 20 days, my co-host, Fresh. How you doing, buddy?
You give me a challenge, I'll find a way to overcome and get it done in time. I'm doing well, Haps. We're heading to another great weekend, cocktail party weekend here in Jacksonville for all of us. A lot of great games on the slate, and can't wait to break them all down.
Absolutely. It's shocking that John Carpenter made that movie in 20 days, though. That's my favorite Halloween as well, the original.
I mean, a dude just walking around trying to kill people, it doesn't take that long.
Yeah, they actually used a knife stabbing a watermelon to get the sound effect. Fascinating
Hmm.
stuff. I
That
know.
that's a deep cut right there.
Yeah. All right, so let's go to, well, hey, pun intended. All right, let's go to the first deep cut of a game that we got. This actually won our fan vote out there on Twitter. So make sure that you guys are following along with us on Twitter so you can vote in our weekly polls. Make sure you are subscribing to our YouTube channel. So subscribe, hit that notification bell. But let's go to Notre Dame at Syracuse. They're going to upstate New York. Currently, right now, Syracuse is a 2.5 point favorite. Over under is set at 48 points right now. Syracuse coming off that heartbreaking loss to Clemson. A lot of people believe that that game should have gone Syracuse's way. They should be still undefeated. And the Irish are a weird team this year, man. Start off the season 0-2, win 3 straight, lose to Stanford at home, then beat the brakes out of UNLV. So, Fresh, I'll go to you right now. Talk to me a little bit. What are you watching for with this Notre Dame Syracuse game?
I mean, I think right off the bat is the mindset of the Orange. Um, a team that hasn't. I don't want to be mean, but they don't know how to win. They've been a young team, been struggling for a while, and Dino Babers finally has his team heading in the right direction. But they have a devastating loss like that, where they feel they might have got robbed or things didn't go their way. Like, where's their psyche coming in to play Notre Dame? On the field, based off of play this year, they are the more superior football team. But are they spending too much time thinking about last week in Death Valley, down there in South Carolina, and not taking care of business at hand, versus the Irish up in Syracuse? Like, that's the biggest focus for me coming in the football game. The keys for them to win, though, and the way you get over it, give Tucker the football, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. That Notre Dame offense does not scare me. You just need to watch out for Michael Mayer, and after you cover him, um, if you run the ball, keep him off the sideline, minimize your mistakes, and your defense plays as well as playing all year, you're in great shape. Because that Syracuse defense, they shut down a very improved Clemson offense last week. So if they can keep that play up, they shouldn't have any trouble with Notre Dame having a home crowd around them, getting an extra support. But the way Notre Dame travels, it'll probably be a little bit 50-50. But you just have to get your minds right, play football, and remember the season still has a long way to go, and you can still have all of your goals ahead of you.
Yeah, Drew Pine has stepped up nicely for the Irish since he took over at quarterback. Sophomore has 12 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's completing about 64% of his passes. He's relying on Michael Mayer. We all knew that was going to happen this season. For as bad as things have been for the Irish, offensively, defensively, and everything in between, Michael Mayer has been one of the consistent pieces in this Notre Dame football team. It's the reason why he's considered one of the best tight ends in all of college football, if not the best tight end in college football. To me, though, Fresh, I don't feel like Notre Dame should be 4-3 on the year. There's too much talent on this Notre Dame team. But when you look in and you go deeper into the team right now, Notre Dame is -7 in the turnover differential. They're only converting 42% of their third downs right now. I don't I don't care how well they're doing in other areas, but if you're not getting continue to extend drives and keep your defense off the field for a much longer period of time, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much talent you have. Sooner or later, people on defense are going to get tired. Notre Dame defensively, they're again being led this year by linebacker J.D. Bertram. We're a big fan of him. Isaiah Foskey has 6 sacks on the year. The Irish are going to need a huge game out of both of these kids to be really good. I look back at it and you said feed Sean Tucker the ball, and he He's been absolutely phenomenal. He's been the heart and soul of this team. He's their second leading receiver. He's their primary rusher. Gavin Schrader, I know he's been fantastic as well, but the offensive line's got to do a better job protecting him. Notre Dame's going to be bringing pressure after him. They're going to get after the football. They're going to try to do some run blitzes. They're going to try to make life very difficult and make sure that Schrader has to be a pure passer in this game. Syracuse, you're going to look to force turnovers. Notre Dame has been known to make mistakes throughout this year. There's been times that Notre Dame just has flat out struggled. If Syracuse can get those turnovers, if they can get Notre Dame's offense off the field, they'll get that dome rocking. It's going to get loud in there. It's going to be scary for Notre Dame to go into that environment there. But there's one thing that gives me pause here, Fresh. Vegas has this game as a 2.5-point favorite for Syracuse. That's home field advantage. Those points are home field advantage. So what Vegas is basically saying is that this is on a neutral site. This is a straight pick'em game. For some reason, this is one of those weird games that I feel like Vegas knows something that we don't. I know they're trying to get equal money on both sides of the betting, but Notre Dame is still a brand name. If Syracuse wins this game, they have a big win over Notre Dame. If the Orange do this, that win's going to mean so much more to them. But I got a weird feeling about this game. I really do. And for some reason, I just got this sinking suspicion that Notre Dame's going to go into the dome and somehow escape. And I'm going to use the word escape with like a 1-point victory.
I mean, if Notre Dame goes and gets a win this week, that builds momentum and confidence for when they play Clemson next week. In that Clemson game, in my opinion, probably outside of South Carolina, Clemson has that game, and they might lose to Notre Dame, cost them a playoff spot in the end. So, uh, if Notre Dame can build momentum and get confidence on both sides of the ball, they could become a much more competitive, effort down the stretch. So it's a sneaky thing. I think a lot of Notre Dame fans will be at that Syracuse game, and you know what? I'm going to go with Syracuse. I think that team is just ready to get it done themselves. But I could see it being close, and I could see where Notre Dame could find a way to win the football game.
Yeah, I think I'm like half rooting for Syracuse, but expecting Notre Dame to win. It's an really, really interesting game to watch. All right, Fresh, let's go to our next game of the week. This is another one that we haven't talked about this team a whole lot, but they're 6-1 on the season. And that's the North Carolina Tar Heels playing host to the Pitt Panthers. Currently, right now, Vegas has this game as North Carolina with a 3-point favorite, over under set at 64.5. Interesting. We haven't talked much Tar Heels, and they're 6-1. I know they have the one loss out there right now, but that's it. And they've won every other game in front of them. And then we have Pitt. Pitt had a great game against, North Carolina lost to Notre Dame, but Pitt, had the great game, really close loss against Tennessee this year. Probably have played Tennessee the second best next to Alabama. But then, they kind of fell off the wagon here. So, Fresh, talk to me a little bit about North Carolina and Pittsburgh.
First of all, this Carolina team is, I think, a team that everybody thought we were going to have last year with Sam Howell coming back, and that squad. Like they were perceived to be loaded last year and to run through and get things done, and they just couldn't play defense. Um, the offensive line couldn't protect Howie's run for his life. But this year, this team they've grown up a lot. Um, you look at Drake May, the freshman quarterback, freshman redshirt, if you will. 2,200 yards passing, 24 touchdowns, and only 3 interceptions. He's run for over 50 yards in the past 3 games each. So he has a little mobility back there, gives him a little flexibility. He's ran pretty well versus App State in that opener and helped lead that surge ahead and then come back and all that fun business, that whole wacky game. And if you don't forget that one, way back in September, it's just the offense is extremely lethal. They're putting points up at a high rate. And the defense is actually, by their standards, vastly improved. And I put vastly in air quotations because it's not exactly, in Illinois or a Michigan or Ohio State or a Georgia, but they're giving up a lot less than they were last year, and at least getting a stop in the game to allow their offense to win a football game. You kind of look at it. Yeah, they lost to Notre Dame. That was kind of the head scratcher. Where at that time Notre Dame was not playing well, and that actually surprises that Notre Dame actually beat North Carolina. But they've allowed the last 3 games, allowed 10 points to Virginia Tech, 24 to Miami, and then 35 to Duke. They've allowed points, but they've been able to get stops at some point during the football game to allow their offense to score. Last year, they weren't getting stops at all, and that's why they were losing football games because it was a sieve. Um, they have a special chance here. If the defense can just get a little better, the offense can stay as consistent. They have a chance to work their way through the rest of the season and most likely play Clemson in the ACC title and have a shot at a championship. Because I mean, let's be real. Clemson has played well, but they have not played great. They have not played a Clemson of like a 2015, 2016, 2017 where they were lights out unbeatable. They have flaws, and if you get them at the right time, you can beat them. I mean, they just benched DJU last week. So this North Carolina team has a lot of things ahead of them, and it really starts with taking care of Pitt. Pitt, obviously the defending ACC champions from last year. Do they still have that mystique? Do they still have some fight? They brought in Keaton Slovis. He only has 5 touchdowns and he has 5 interceptions on the season. Not exactly the air it out quarterback they expected to fill those shoes of Kenny Pickett. They've actually changed their mentality offensively, and they are now a run first football team with Israel Ebekanda, who has run for 959 and 13 touchdowns, and the team as a whole is averaging 189 a game. They have shifted their focus from passing 3-4 receivers. Probably had a lot to do with Pickett and Addison both being gone, but maybe the defense is getting a little exposed and need to slow the football game down and run the ball behind an offensive line that's getting some holes open. Um, if I'm Pitt, you got to trust your defense to do the best they possibly can, but you've got to run the football, slow the game down, keep Derek May and that Tar Heel offense on the sideline as much as possible. Because if you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. They're going to put points on the board. Um, is the moment too big for them though? Now with the pressure on, beforehand they're like, oh, it's North Carolina. Their defense is very good. They're sort of just waiting in the weeds, whatever. But now they're actually the lead dog, and they have a 2-game lead on Georgia Tech right now for their side of the ACC. They have a little buffer there, and they are the target on everyone's back. You got Pitt this week. You got Virginia. You got Wake Forest, who's currently ranked. Georgia Tech and NC State. They do have some tough teams left in the schedule, so you can't throw away a game versus Pitt here if you really want to truly contend for an ACC title and really make a statement that this team has returned to what they were in 2020, and actually legit contender for top 20 squad and maybe a future ACC crown. Um, in the end, I just have a feeling that North Carolina's in the right direction. Chiswick has gotten that defense to improve week in and week out and got some stops. And I think Carolina finds a way to really build momentum and get the W over Pitt, and make that next step toward playing Charlotte and taking on the Clemson Tigers.
So how do I say this again? Israel, how did you pronounce his last name?
Abikanda, or
Abika
Abikanda is the way I pronounce it.
Abikanda. I like that last name. I think he's a phenomenal. You know, you look at him; he's got 900 yards rushing. He's almost 1,000 yards, 13 touchdowns. He had a 300-yard rushing game against Virginia Tech and scored 6 touchdowns in there. But you know, you look at it, 4 of his last 5 games, he's crossed the 125-yard mark. He's got 12 of his 13 touchdowns have come in those games right there. He is becoming a really special running back. And so this Pitt team, if they can make that transition, and I'm in my mind, I'm thinking Michigan State last year, where Michigan State ran Kenneth Walker the third into the ground at times. And you saw him start to lose some of the power towards the end of the season where he wasn't as effective. I think that they could do the same thing here. I think Pitt, you know, is kind of going away from putting everything on Slovis's shoulders, that they're going to really kind of hammer that running game and force North Carolina to stop them, because North Carolina this year, their defense is okay, is the best way to say it. Like you say, vastly improved. Like, yeah, they're all right. They're not. I don't feel like they're world beaters by any means whatsoever. They've let up quite a few points at certain times too. But you know, I got to go back to what you're saying. Drake May, especially as a freshman right now, what he's doing over there in Chapel Hill is absolutely unbelievable. The 24 touchdowns is just absolutely incredible. I'm so impressed by him with that. But then on top of that, he has 378 yards rushing. So he's been able to do it a little bit with his feet. and he is also their primary ball carrier. So this kid is kind of doing everything. And the name that you forgot to mention there, Fresh, and that we need to come back to him because last season with Sam Howell, we were really high on Josh Downs. He's had a nice year. Is it the same as last year right now? He's got 37 catches for 425 yards. Look at last year, he had over 100 catches for 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns. But he's still showing that he's a quality wide receiver there in the ACC. Definitely one of the kids that you'd want to have on your team. I'm with you. I think that North Carolina is probably the better team in this. I would love to see Pitt keep this one close, but I'm gonna take in North Carolina. I'm gonna give Pitt the 3 points there. I'm definitely hammering the over in this game for some reason though. I'm definitely gonna take the over of that 64.5 right there. So I like North
Yeah, that's a
Carolina.
smart move.
Yeah, I like
I
North
mean,
Carolina.
it's good you bring up Downs there. I think what the reason why this offense and the reason why Drake May's been much better, is he's spreading it out. He's not forcing it to one receiver. And I think that where you look at football in general, NFL, college, if there's one single receiver and he's a young quarterback trying to force it to the one guy, you get turnovers, you get, just inconfidence in that, always trying to rely on them, not developing anybody else. The offense becomes more lethal when you start focusing on 3 and 4 different guys, spreading it out. They don't have the coverage all rolling to one different guy. And it keeps the defense on their heels where they have to defend the full field as opposed to we are going to double up, you know, the number one receiver, up above and beyond, down low, up top, and then force you to throw it to somebody else you don't have confidence with, or pull the Bill Belichick where everybody else is sort of taken away and you let him be the streamline of that one receiver, but you have him, kind of bracketed. It's a smart move, and I think it shows that a offense has developed. And you don't hear anything from Downs in the media like I'm not getting the ball, this and that, whining. He's being very professional and very smart about it, where he understands that he's going to get the team is winning, all should be good because his stock is only going to improve by showing he can be a good teammate and also get his numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Fresh. Game number 3 of the weekend, and probably shocking some people that this isn't our game of the week. It it, it may be the best game of the weekend when all is said and done. The Kentucky Wildcats traveling to Rocky Top. Tennessee 12.5 point favor. Over under is set at 63.5. This is the 7 o'clock game of the night on ESPN. Fresh, the first line of my notes here, I say, get your popcorn ready. Two great quarterbacks squaring off. What say you?
It's funny how I have mine bracketed. I have Levis versus Hooker. You're gonna see all the NFL scouts talking Will Levis and Hendon Hooker. Among C.J. Stroud, the rest of those guys for who's gonna be the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks taken in the draft. Will Levis banged up a little bit. Obviously missed the South Carolina game that ended up resulting in a Kentucky loss. They definitely missed him in that game. But Hendon Hooker has been lights out all season long. This game, I think you're going to need Kentucky's defense is almost identical in points allowed, yards allowed, etc. to Alabama. And we all saw what Hendon Hooker did to Alabama. They put on a show. Now, maybe they were a little juiced up because they hadn't beat them in 15 years and they kind of were like, we have to let it out and go. Well, you probably get the same, 56-49, explosion of points. I don't think it'll be that crazy, but I got a feeling Tennessee's going to score some points. So that really puts the onus on how does Will Levis in this Kentucky offense score points? They have two pretty good running backs. Obviously, Chris Rodriguez, the lead back there. Are they going to rely on them and get conservative and try to keep Hendon Hooker in that offense on the sideline, dictate the time and play it and slow play the football game and maybe try to win it in ugly fashion? Or are they going to try to use the receivers, air it out, and try to stretch the football field, which, based on what we've seen so far this season, is not their MO. They don't have the Wandell Robinson, receiving elite receiver on the team like they did last year to help take off the top of that defense and become a major playmaker. They're going to have to get creative. Stoops is going to have to really use that defense and get creative on blitzes, on coverage, finding ways to get home. I mean, he's obviously seen Tennessee multiple weeks at their best. You think he's smart enough to figure out how to, dictate coverages and manipulate and force Hooker into bad situations. They didn't win just by defense versus Ole Miss, and they didn't win just by defense versus South Carolina, but they have kept the point totals down. it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I think the 12.5 is right on par for what Tennessee should be favored. Um, it's it's going to be interesting also. Does Tennessee care about playing Kentucky, or are they looking ahead to Georgia? Um, it's you got Cats this week, Dogs next week, and a couple weeks down the road. Right now, as it's saying, South Carolina's ranked. Will they be ranked when they play in a couple weeks? Who knows? Um, right now, Tennessee is only one of two schools in the nation that have played four teams when at the time when they were ranked in the top 25. TCU being the other. You're probably like, who are the four teams that were Tennessee played ranked? Well, Pitt and Florida were ranked at the time. They are obviously not ranked now. So that's where those stats and those numbers can probably get a little inflated. But at the time, they were top 25 teams, and Tennessee beat them both. And obviously, taking care of business in LSU and taking care of Alabama. They have three more, which obviously makes their resume extremely potent and gives them a lot of opportunities. I'll go into some sort of. I looked at ESPN playoff predictors, and one loss here, one loss there, how their odds of making the playoffs. I'll sort of try to dive into that later in the episode, but they are in a great spot with all these ranked teams on their schedule. They just need to maintain to take care of business, focus on the present. If they do look ahead, there's wilder things. It is college football. Kentucky might be able to get them. But I think if Tennessee keeps their mind and they just do their job, they have a chance to get this thing done. And Hendon Hooker will have one more opportunity to really showcase his skills as a great quarterback.
So, Fresh, my first note is the two great quarterbacks squaring off. But the second note I have in here is if anyone in college football is going, or especially in the SEC, is going to figure out how to slow down the Tennessee offense, it's Mark Stoops. Kentucky is allowing less than 300 yards a game. They've been pretty solid on that side of the ball. But when you think about this, is what does that look like on the scoreboard? Does that look like holding Tennessee to 28 points, 31, 35? Because only one time this year, Tennessee has been held under the 35 mark, and that was to Pitt at Pitt. So it makes me have a lot of pause that as good as I think that the Kentucky defense is, and I have a whole bunch of respect for Mark Stoops as a coach. I think he is probably one of the most underrated coaches in all of college football right now. He doesn't get the love he deserves. Is he going to be able to scheme up something to stop Hendon Hooker or Wright or Hyatt? Does Tennessee get Tillman back? I mean, I know he's been like waiting in the weeds whether or not he's coming fully back. I haven't heard yet if he's fully healthy, which we're all kind of waiting for because he's going to be a nice shot in the arm for the Volunteers. Is he waiting next week till Georgia? I don't know. If Hooker has a huge game here, this could be the moment where him and CJ Stroud get neck and neck for the Heisman. Because we all kind of are looking at it and saying the Heisman and CJ Stroud's to lose. Hooker is on his heels right now, and he's getting closer and closer to being in that consideration. And it's a conversation I even had. I said, at the end of the day, Hendon Hooker's got a great possibility of being the Heisman Trophy winner this year. It's been phenomenal what he's been able to accomplish. He has a big game here, and I think it's definitely there. As good as Tennessee's offense is, though, Fresh, their defense has been almost next level, like bad. Like they have not been a solid defensive unit. Yes, I see them hold their own against teams like Ball State and some lesser known opponents, UT, Martin. But you got to remember, as great as that game is against Alabama, and they win on a last-second field goal, look at how many points they gave up to Alabama. Alabama just moved the ball up and down the field. Will Levis is a legit NFL quarterback. Depending on what ranking you're looking at, he's either the top quarterback in this draft or he's number 2, depending on where it is. Chris Rodriguez, since coming back for Kentucky, has been a nice little addition there. He's kind of really helping the Wildcats control the clock on offense as well. You're going to need to do that against the Volunteers. The best thing that Kentucky can do is to keep Tennessee's offense off the field. That's long, drawn-out drives, moving the ball. You got to have 10, 11, 12-play drives, 14-play drives, 15-play drives. And if you can, that's how you're going to stop the Tennessee offense is don't give them the ball. And when you do give them the ball, get a stop here or there. And that's where you'll really be able to help. Kentucky's still going to need some help from those wide receivers. I know Robinson hasn't played since the South Carolina game. Brown and Key, they're both freshmen still, but they're both starting to contribute there for the Wildcats. Kentucky cannot allow a game like the Ole Miss game where they just kind of shoot themselves in the foot. The South Carolina game was also kind of like, eh. But this is a quality Kentucky team. And when Tennessee wins this game, and Tennessee is going to win, I have 45-27 in my notes right here. Don't think like that's like Kentucky sucks. Like it's going to be real easy for us to look at that scoreboard at the end on Sunday night or on Sunday morning from Saturday night and go, man, Kentucky is just hot garbage. I'm like, no, there's talent on that team. It's a well-coached team. It's got a great quarterback. Tennessee is that good. And granted, I am very high on Tennessee, and people are like, wow, you're really jumping on the bandwagon. Guys, I've been on the bandwagon for over a year now. Don't tell me I'm jumping on a bandwagon now. I've been riding this bandwagon since they were 7-5 last year. But I got Tennessee rolling in this game, but they need to be careful because there's a good possibility that they're looking ahead to that matchup versus the Dogs.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee right now, they own the number one in total yards per game. They own the number one offense in the country, averaging 571 yards. Number two, George Bulldogs at 526. So even 40 yards more than the Dogs. Third is TCU, fourth is Ohio State, and fifth is Oregon. So that Tennessee offense is lethal, and they are putting points on the board. I think right now they just have to. Are they mature enough to handle the success? One of the last thing I had on there was now they are the hunted, not the hunter. Everyone now knows that they're number three in the country. They're coming after them.
Yeah. All right, Fresh. Let's go to the night game on ABC. Big Brother versus Little Brother. Michigan State traveling to Ann Arbor to face the Michigan Wolverines. Fresh on paper, this should be a blowout. That Michigan State should be absolutely destroyed in this game. Michigan is a 22-point favorite. Over under is set at 54.5 right now. The Michigan Wolverines are rolling. They're 7-0. They took care of business against Penn State a couple weeks ago, beat the brakes off of them. They destroyed Iowa. They've destroyed Indiana. They went to the closest game they've had is against Maryland right now, and even that game wasn't as close as like the scoreboard has it there. This Spartan team, coming on the year, they're 3-4 right now. They got wins over two MAC schools and Wisconsin. They got beat up at Washington, beat up by Minnesota at home, beat up by Maryland, boat race by Ohio State. I don't know here, Fresh. Like, I want to say that because this is a rivalry game, and it is a rivalry game, that I don't want to do the cliche of throw the stats out in a rivalry game. I think that's not a good thing to say because they matter. But I don't know. Do you see any way that let me ask you this way: does Michigan State have any chance in this game? What is it going to take for Sparty to win this game, or is Michigan just going to continue to steamroll people?
Rivalry games, crazy things happen. I think that's first off, in general. But I keep seeing the picture of was it 2016 where Michigan's punting and the punter messes up and then Sparty scoops it up and scores right at the very end, in the late in the fourth quarter to win the ball game. I think it's even at the buzzer went off. Um, you've got to. This is going to really test Mel Tucker and his football team. And what players do they have in that program? Do they have heart to play for Michigan State? Um, they, I'm actually impressed. They took the double overtime of Wisconsin. They showed some heart in that football game to sort of rally when if they haven't been that decent all year. But this is a whole different test. You won last year at home. Now you're going on the road into the big house against a very, very good Michigan football team who um, Michigan's going to be motivated because if you look at the way their schedule's set up, it's a god awful schedule, and I'll explain a little bit more later. But they basically have to go undefeated to make the playoff. They're probably not getting in that large bid because their strength of schedule is so bad. So it means if they have a chance, they're not letting up. They are going to they have to pass the eye test. I mean, that means if they have any smell any kind of blood, they're going to put points on the board the best they possibly can. If you are Sparty, you are Mel Tucker, you cannot allow that. Your pride of your program. What you just got this huge contract last year. I think even though it was like after the week that you beat them right before you played Ohio State, you got this massive contract to stay. And ever since then, the team has looked like a shell of what they were up to that point. Um, where's the passing attack? Where's the rushing attack? The defense has not improved. What is the identity of this Michigan State football team, and do they have any pride to take down their rival, or at least show up and make it a football game? If you get steamrolled here, any recruiting battle between Michigan and Michigan State, or maybe even Michigan State might start losing out to anybody else in the Big Ten because you're seeing there's so many holes in this team. They have not improved. Were terrible the first year in 2020. They shocked everyone last year, and they had Kenneth Walker III as the main, powerhouse. And then this year they've reverted back to what they're in 2020. What is the core of this football team? We know what Harbaugh and what the Wolverines are going to do. They're going to run the football, run the football, run the football, and play stingy defense. I mean, they have an amazing top 5 in the country in rushing yards per game. Their defense is highly ranked in the Big Ten and all the ranking categories. This team is lethal and they're focused. We're still waiting for that moment. They have to get these wins because if you look at the rest of the schedule, outside of Illinois and Ohio State, they have no other. They don't play any other ranked teams in the Penn State game. So their strength of schedule, their quality wins are lacking. They need quality blowout wins to really pass the eye test and show the committee that they are legit and they're just playing inferior competition. Um, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens at night. Um, I just I don't see any way that Sparty makes this a football game unless Michigan chokes. And by Michigan choking, they start turning the ball over. They get cocky. They get careless, and they are not focused on taking care of the task at hand. Um, but I think those odds are very few and far between that Michigan State finds a way to get the W on Saturday.
Yeah, fresh. I just wasn't seeing it, and as much as I was kind of looking through, and I was trying to find like where would be the one area like looking for the advantage Michigan State would have over Michigan. It's really not there. Michigan State has more penalties than the Wolverines. You look at them; they aren't able to run the ball like Michigan does. They're still, you know, this is going to sound really weird, Fresh, that Michigan State is actually greatly improved on their pass defense. Like their pass defense was god awful all last year.
Well, they were dead last the first 2 weeks of the year, so it kind of
Yeah,
you can only go up.
and they are only allowing 153 yards rushing on the season. So there is potential here, but Blake Corum's got 900 yards already. He's got 13 touchdowns. Then you look at Donovan Edwards; he's got 304 touchdowns. Uh, McCarthy is playing good. I don't think they've asked him to do a whole lot. He's completing 77% of his passes. He's got 9 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, 5 sacks on the year. I like I'm searching here, Fresh, for like something to say about Sparty that I could go, make sure you tune in. Like you have to tune into this game at least for like the first quarter or maybe even up until halftime because Michigan State. This could be one of those games that we just don't see it. Maybe Peyton Thorne just has a career night for him because he does have talent on the wide receivers. Keon Coleman and Jaden Reed both are very talented wide receivers out there. I don't necessarily know like I wouldn't call them like great receivers, but there's talent. They're decent receivers. They'd be starters on most football teams in college football. They have 8 touchdowns between them. I don't know how you feel about Berger over there. He's got 5 touchdowns rushing, but I don't know, Fresh. I'm looking at this, and I mean, they got 17 sacks. They can get after the football. Michigan is going to win this game. The 22, I don't necessarily know if I can take the 22, but you know what? I'm going to say Michigan rolls by 3 touchdowns. Let's say by at least 21.
Well, I think this comes down to being, are they battle tested and are they focused? Going back to the game we talked about just a second ago, Tennessee up to this point, as of record, has played 2 ranked teams that are currently ranked right now in the top 25, and all the teams they've played have a current record of 30-23. They've played a bunch of winning football teams. But when you look at Michigan on the same kind of situation, up to this point, they have only played one team that's currently ranked in the top 25, and that was Penn State. And of all the teams they've played up to this point, their combined record is 25-29. They've played a bunch of bad football teams, and they've done what they should do. They've beaten the junk out of them, and they've won. But when you start playing quality football teams moving forward, how are this team going to perform? Michigan State right now still fits in as a bad football team, not really giving them much of a challenge. Is this actually going to hurt them? Are they going to have inflated stats or inflated confidence when they play Illinois, or even most likely when they take on the Buckeyes at the end of November?
Yeah, and this is where it comes into play here, Fresh. Like Michigan, the thing I don't really love about their schedule, I get it. These schedules are complex, and they take years and years and years to put together and to coordinate and say like, okay, we got to have a team. We got to find a team that we think is going to be good 8, 9, 10 years from now, and also be willing to play us, whether it's a home and home, whether it's them coming to our place. And then on top of that, like we're not going to play more than one team in our non-conference schedule. You know, it's rough because Michigan, they didn't know. Like you're right, they played Penn State, and Penn State was ranked. They beat the brakes off of Penn State. Michigan, you can't blame Michigan for the collapse of Iowa's offense. We expected Iowa to be so much better than what they were, but you're right.
Iowa's offense was bad last year.
But they're a weak non-conference schedule. It's a very, very weak non-conference schedule. And then you look going forward here too, Fresh. Like, and I'll tell you this: Michigan doesn't have really a marquee non-conference game until 2024. You look next year; they got ECU at home, UNLV at home, and Bowling Green at home. It doesn't jump off the page and say, "Wow, that's a really challenging slate." In 2024, you got Fresno State, which, depending on seeing what they do here, they can be kind of good. They can be a little tough. They got to travel to Texas then, and that'll be, I think at that time, they'll have Texas will be in the SEC by then, if not the following year. And then they got Arkansas State. And then the following year, they have a home and home versus Oklahoma, which it looks like they're slowly starting to schedule a little bit tougher. But man, Michigan's really you got to really pick up your schedule. You look at what some of these other teams are doing, and you're being left in the dust right now. So I got the Wolverines, 3 scores on that game there.
But though they're winning these games in blowout fashion. They're not winning, squeakers against less competition. That at least shows they're heading in the right direction. But I do have Michigan win big.
All right. Fresh, let's go to the noon game right after game day. The Ohio State Buckeyes going to Penn State. Games at noon. It feels like this game should have been at night. I know Penn State used their whiteout tradition last week against Minnesota. Ohio State's a 15.5-point road favorite. Over-under is set at 61 points. The first note I have here, Fresh, is that can Penn State even hang with the Buckeyes? And that's a legitimate question that you got to ask, especially after watching what Ohio State has done week in, week out. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you here, though. But what are you seeing?
I mean, the first thing I have here is question mark. Is this the most important game in James Franklin's career?
Valid
He
question.
still doesn't really have a he doesn't have a marquee win at Penn State. He'll get us. You know what? He's kind of like a Mark Richt. He'll get you the 9 or 10 win season, but when it comes to the big teams, the Michigans, the Penn State, the Michigans and the Ohio States, he's not getting the job done. And it brings me to my next point that I have there's like, do we get the mediocre / bad Penn State that played versus Michigan and Purdue? And they played bad and they got lucky versus Purdue in that opener. Or do we get the explosive team that went to beat Auburn and beat Minnesota? I'm not saying they're explosive, they're going to blow Ohio State out. Not at all. But I'm saying at least they have energy on offense and energy on defense, and they're actually making gains and making it competitive. Because that team that showed up versus Auburn and Minnesota that blew them out, at least that football game would be spirited, and they would be able to go toe to toe and give Ohio State a challenge. Ohio State has been an amazing football team all year. They're obviously they're the fourth best offense by total yards in the country. They're putting points up, and they have, a plethora of receivers. JSN hasn't even really played all year, trying to get healthy. And their offensive receivers, Harrison leading the way, have been lighting it up just like nobody even left. You got Mayan Williams. Obviously, have the depth at the running back position there. Stroud's finding holes. The defense is playing much better. Um, this is going to be a tall test for Penn State, but at least can they compete in this football game? Fox made this a noon game to help blow up their, big noon kickoff sort of thing. I think they got overzealous on that. They should have figured out and maybe understand themselves of sometimes maybe we want to have it noon is a little too overzealous. You have to want to have better noon games, but there are certain games that should be your 7:30 or 8 o'clock primetime kickoff, not noon. That would have obviously helped Penn State a little bit more. I think the noon kickoff does Ohio State a lot more because you're going to have these students who are probably still rolling out of bed, haven't been tailgating all day. Will they be able to bring the energy in this big game and become a major deciding factor that usually are for a night kickoff? Will that same impact be felt, 12, 12:15, 1 o'clock, 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon? Um, so far, the Buckeyes' opponents have a combined record of 25-27 up to this point, and none are currently ranked. So this is a huge opportunity for Ohio State to get their ranked win and help their resume. I think they're still the best team in the Big Ten, but you need to pass eye test. You need to have resume builders support in case anything crazy might happen. You have a chance right now to beat a top 20 team, and you have a chance to really put up points. And that's where you're at style points now at this point of the year, where people remember November. The playoff committee is going to start watching the top 20 teams more exclusively than they are going to watch every team in the country. And if you're putting a thumping on somebody else who's also ranked, that's going to add a little extra back in the memory. All right, this team did this when it counted on this day. You've got to be able to take advantage of the situation. You've been planning all season. You've been getting through the schedule. Now it's time to really show up. Can Coach Day and can those Buckeyes make a statement on Saturday and really fuel a chance to almost guarantee, you know, guarantee a spot that even if they lost to Michigan by like 3 or 4 points, God forbid that ever happen. If you're an Ohio State fan, don't yell at me. Still puts them in the consideration of even an at-large bid because you dominated everybody else up to this point. So this is where that extra help, getting that extra support for your record, and trying to lock in that one potential at-large bid in that playoff spot. God forbid anything else happens, you need to take advantage, and this is that Penn State opportunity. If they struggle versus Penn State and they don't come out guns a-blazing, it's going to start raising questions about Coach Day and that offense. Were they just beating up on a bunch of bad football teams? Uh, I don't think that's the case. I think this team is very good, but this is the chance to really prove it going down the stretch because you have this game, and then look at the rest of the schedule. Then you have Michigan. I don't think Northwestern, Indiana, or Maryland would give them any competition. You have two chances to really show and supplant your dominance on ranked teams in the conference and get yourself into that Big Ten title game and go from there. And as it's funny, I said it. Someone put out on Twitter, there is still technically a scenario out there that Northwestern could find a way to actually represent the Big Ten West if a bunch of crazy scenarios happen. They would arrive in Indianapolis with 3 total wins, but win a bunch of tiebreakers. And that actually might hurt Michigan and or Ohio State's strength of schedule, whoever they would have to play in that title game. So that's actually a worst case scenario. They want Illinois to make it all the way there and help the strength of schedule and give them an extra boost there at the end of the season. But I think Ohio State takes care of business. I think this game is over in the middle of the third quarter.
I sure hope so, Fresh, because I looked at this and there's some interesting things about Penn State that gave me a minute to pause there. Penn State's pass defense, while statistically not an elite pass defense, you look at the names on there. Jair Brown, 3 interceptions on the year. Joey Porter Jr., 8 pass breakups. Kalen King, 7 pass breakups. They do have some guys on that back end of that defense that may be able to hang with one or two of the Ohio State wide receivers. But that was the thing I put on there is can Penn State shut down all of the Buckeye weapons? And that's the hardest thing to do. You can have a great defense. Yeah, you shut down the wide receivers. You look at what Notre Dame did at the start of the season. Everything was underneath. They wound up forcing Ohio State to take 4 or 5 yard passes. What'd they do? Ohio State turns to the run game and slashes them all up and down the field with Mayan Williams. You look at some of these things. Penn State is going to have a very similar game plan like they did against Minnesota and Auburn. Singleton and Allen, they need to control the clock. They need to run the football. and then we need to control the down and distance. And they need to also force the Buckeyes into third and long situations when they're on defense there. But the real question is, can the Nittany Lions run the ball against this Ohio State defense? You look last week about what Ohio State did to Iowa. Iowa was averaging only 2 yards a carry. If you take out Iowa's 3 longest runs of the day, it turns that into 32 yards on 32 carries. So they're averaging 1 yard a game, or 1 yard carry there. Now I don't think Singleton and Allen are going to be held to 1 to 2 yards a carry. They're much better backs than what Iowa's got. But if Penn State can't run the football, watch out, because when you put the entire game on Sean Clifford's shoulder, Ohio State's going to pin their ears back and they're going to go after him. 19 sacks on the year, 7 interceptions. This could be, if they can't run the football, it will be a very tough day on Clifford, because you can't lean on him heavily to win the game. Michigan forced Penn State to play from behind, and when they did that, Clifford only completed less than 42% of his passes when they had to play from behind. Like, that's the thing about Penn State. They have an awful loss against Michigan. An awful loss. They got absolutely boat raced in that game in Ann Arbor. We forget that Penn State went down into Alabama and beat the living tar out of Auburn. We've seen Penn State look really, really good at times, but I'm with you on this, Fresh. Like, I had to look. I go, when was the last time that James Franklin beat Michigan? And it was back in 2019. It's been a while since he's beat Ohio State. This is a tough, tough thing for him to do. Ohio State, I think it's going to be a big day for Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson. One, both. And then I also put in here, Marvin Harrison Jr. is starting to look like the best wide receiver in the country. He is absolutely electric. I hate to say that we're forgetting about JSN, but I really like Harrison Jr., man. He's looking absolutely phenomenal, taking after his old man, which is really fun because Marvin Harrison Sr. was one of my favorite wide receivers to watch when I was growing up as a kid. So I really like this. I think Ohio State's going to win this game. They'll win big, but there's a scenario here where I have just this weird sinking suspicion that because it's in Happy Valley, for some reason, this game may be closer than we think, but I'm really hoping Ohio State wins big.
Just for being old nostalgia, I'm actually really looking forward to Marvin Harrison Jr. versus Joey Porter Jr. The former, NFL dads watching their 2 kids square it off in a big game. Like, that would be pretty cool to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Fresh, let's go to the game of the week here in Jacksonville, Florida. The world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Great fun. It's a neutral site game. Georgia versus Florida. They're playing at TIAA Bank Field. Georgia is seriously sitting at a 22.5-point favorite in this game. Over-under is set at 58.5 points. This is the start of the tough stretch for Georgia here. I know Georgia's had a nice little schedule starting off the year. They got to put together their wins. But as you've mentioned before here, Fresh, this is when the true test really starts for Georgia. And then you look at Florida. Florida's 1-3 in the SEC, 4-3 overall. Which Gators team are we getting in this game? Are we getting the team that beat Utah? Is this the team that kind of, for a while, looked like they were holding their own versus Tennessee? Or is this the team that gave up 45 points to LSU and just absolutely got dominated in that game? So, Fresh, you're the resident Georgia fan. This is one of the games on your schedule. If not the, actually, I think this is the game on your schedule for you. So, cocktail party
Well,
time.
historically, the cocktail party is always rivalry, but Tennessee is definitely the game this year that's really on the radar. Um, all the brown water stocked up and ready to go for the next 4 weeks. You got Gators, Vols, Mississippi State, and then Kentucky. So it's gonna be a stretch run here down the end. And we've all kind of looked at like, oh, Georgia hasn't played anybody. We mentioned combined records for other schools, but up to this point, right now as it stands, Georgia actually has played 2 teams that are currently ranked in the top 25. and all the teams have a combined record of 29-22. So they've actually played a bunch of winning football teams. On paper, initially, the beginning of the season didn't look like it, but they have played teams that are actually winning. But this is going to be the true test. And it starts here in Jacksonville versus the Gators. First off, you bring up a great point there with the way the Gators have played. Strong versus Kentucky. Yeah, they lost that football game, but at least they competed. Beat Utah. They gave Tennessee on the road, too. It wasn't at home. It was on the road. Gave Tennessee all they could handle. Um, it's good. What does Anthony Richardson? What does that Florida offense look like when they come to Jacksonville on Saturday? They are obviously going to run the football with that trio of running backs. The passing game is going to have to find some sort of explosion. They're going to have to try to take their deep shots on the Georgia defense to be able to stay in the football game. Last year though, I think they freaked out too much. They didn't play smart at the end of the half. After the couple turnovers, Dan Mullen kept trying to throw the football and resulted in the pick six by Nakobe Dean, and then it sort of spiraled out of control. They were in that football game to begin. They kind of played with emotion, and they gave the Dogs a fight until the turnover started mounting in a quick succession. They have to avoid that this week if they even want to compete, because that Georgia offense, number 2 in the country right now, and very explosive, putting up points, well over 40. Silently, I think quietly, no one really talks about them doing it, but the plethora of tight ends, the running game, they've been able to manipulate and put in certain packages to get Stetson Bennett in place to succeed. Um, Stetson Bennett has actually not had much success in Jacksonville the 2 times he's played here. 2020, threw a touchdown, got injured on the play. Dogs are up 14-0. He was out of the football game. They ended up losing to Dan Mullen and Trask and the rest of the Gators. And then last year, struggled early, missed some throws, had a pick there at the goal line, and then the defense sort of rallied and got him back going, and he was able to survive. But he was not the reason why they won the football game there. And it's actually kind of why there was still doubt in Stetson Bennett at that point of the season of could he be the quarterback. He obviously made major strides down the stretch after that game, but Jacksonville has not been kind to him. Will he actually be able to put together a confident and explosive passing game and effort on Saturday and be the leader that he's been up to this point? He's shown, some good moments, and he's always been showing improvement, but can he do it here in TIA Bank and lead the Dogs moving forward? Um, it's You also kind of have to worry about this is a weird situation. We've been, it's been on Twitter and people have been talking about it where Georgia's fans, Georgia players, are they actually looking past the Gators toward Tennessee? That's very uncharted territory in the past 20 something years. Haven't felt like that since, maybe the early mid 80s where Florida was just an afterthought and they weren't the direct, real, true competition, to the Dogs at that point. Ever since Spurrier arrived, it switched the pendulum and the Gators definitely became a true focus. But with Tennessee looming next week, it makes you question: are players going to play as hard? Um, does Kirby Smart play players that are injured in this football game, or does he hold them out, in hopes that other guys can get the job done and then they're healthy for Tennessee? Kirby doesn't play players that are hurt. We saw it with JT Daniels last year. We've seen it with a bunch of other guys where he holds them out. And you know what? I'm totally supportive of that. You have a full roster of guys. You have to have confidence in the other guys to play. You don't want to put guys in situations they might, be in a bad, and get worse. So does Jalen Carter, does A.D. Mitchell actually see the field this week? Or do they get like a handful of plays, or do you just hold them out completely and hopefully they're fully healthy for Tennessee in the stretch run? From there, that's another question mark. They've been able to play well the past couple of weeks without those 2 guys really in the lineup, but can they continue to move forward and without those guys on the field and get the same contribution for everybody? Um, it it's an interesting football game. The environment's you got to feel more Gator fans are selling tickets this time around again, and Georgia fans are going to buy them up. So will that help give the guys extra jolt? We heard some stuff this week where the players are actually still mad about losing that 2020 game where they were up 14-0. They saw the seniors lose that football game and kind of want to get revenge. Um, and you look at Billy Napier and his first really run with all his Florida Gators. What is his staple on this rivalry? It's your introduction to it. What kind of energy does he bring? What kind of trickery? What kind of unique looks does he bring offensively and defensively to Kirby Smart and the Georgia team? And what are they going to see? It's different from a Dan Mullen led program that they've had the past few years. In the end, I think Georgia runs the football. They're able to shut down the Florida running game, keep it within reason, and they find ways to get a win. I say 37-17, 37-13. But they'll pull away in the third and fourth quarter in the past few years. First quarter, I think we're going to see a lot of juice from Florida, and I'm even going to say it right now. I think Florida might even have a lead early in that first quarter. Sort of jumping out with a little extra momentum, and Georgia's got to sort of settle themselves down and find ways to get it done in the end. But Dogs take care of business. They do get a little scare early, but Georgia prevails and continues to move undefeated and set up that big matchup in Athens versus Tennessee the week after.
Fresh, the cocktail party is an interesting experience no matter what. Whether you're a fan of Georgia, whether you're a fan of Florida, I've gotten a couple of opportunities as an Ohio State fan to experience it, and it is definitely a something that every college football fan should do. If you're listening to this podcast and you are a big time fan of college football, attending the Georgia Florida game is one of those marquee events. For this, since 2011, Georgia 7-4 against Florida. In those games, I just don't see Georgia being tested too much by this Florida team. I think if this was a Florida team that had a dynamic passing attack and was able to put up points in bunches pretty quick and had like that high powered, fast, quick offense, it might be a little bit of a different story. But the Gators are a running team. The Anthony Richardson's only completing 57% of his passes, and he has more interceptions than touchdowns this year. If they want any bit of a chance in this game, Florida's got to also improve on the defensive side of the ball. They've They forced 11 turnovers on the season. They're going to need at least 2 or 3 turnovers on Georgia to make this even a ball game for Florida to even have a chance. And when I'm going through all of these, I almost am starting to go back to that Michigan State-Michigan game. I think Florida's a little bit better of a team than Michigan State is, but I don't think that it's far off in the level of this matchup here. Georgia has a 3-headed rushing attack and it is a monster of attack with Edwards, Milton, and McIntosh. 13 touchdowns between them. The team has 24 rushing touchdowns on the year. That's been absolutely phenomenal for them. Stetson Bennett's completing over 70% of his passes. Got over 2,000 yards passing on the year. You look at this, it's weird to say that the offense is leading Georgia. That was the thing that was so weird to me is that, especially after last year, like, and nothing to take away from that. You got to remember, like, defenses like the 2021 Georgia Bulldogs do not come around. That is not a every year type of defense. That is a once in a generational defense. That will be a defense that is talked about years from now, whether you're a Georgia fan or whether you're not a Georgia fan. People will continuously bring up how great the 2021 defense was. And that's the impressive thing about them. You look back and it's the same way we talk about the 2001 Baltimore Ravens and how great that defense was. It's the same thing how they talk about the 85 Chicago Bears, how great that defense was. But those defense aren't year in and year out. I like how Kirby Smart has kind of adjusted the Georgia team, make them a more offensive team that they're able to put some points up. That's the thing that's really been impressive for me. The only way I look at this is if Florida wants a chance, they better have studied that Missouri tape inside and out, and especially the first 3 quarters of that game. I still don't even think that you could study that for a whole year, and I still don't know if you could execute with this. It could get weird, and the only if I'm a Florida fan, you're like, wow, can you give me any type of hope here? All I'll say is the 2000 Ohio State Michigan game. Ohio State goes into Ann Arbor. I think they were either 6-5 at the time or 5-5 at the time. And Ohio State goes in and beats Michigan, who is a highly ranked team in that game. And that was just Tressel had the guys ready to play. And maybe Napier in his first year can have them play. I think we're going to see Stetson Bennett and the wide receivers really work on that passing attack this week. I don't think we're going to see a lot of. I think it'll be shocking how much we'll see Stetson Bennett throw the ball instead of running the ball in this, because I think Georgia's going to want to get that work in their passing attack. I don't know, man. I'm going Georgia wins. Could be a unique game. And I'll warn you, Georgia, just don't look ahead to Tennessee. I know that that's the easy thing because the Gators can get you on this one. And who knows, if you're a Georgia fan and you wind up wearing a pink tutu outside a pizzeria one night after the game, or not pink tutu, an orange and blue tutu outside of a pizzeria, it could be a tough night. But I'm going with for you, Fresh, from our buddy Stevo, for our buddy Adam, all of them who listen to the show. I think Georgia's going to win this. I think it's going to be something like 42 to like 18 or something weird like that. So give me Georgia in a big win. Cocktail parties are always fun, though.
I mean, all of us Georgia fans know there's been many times where we've come in as actually the higher ranked team, and bad things have happened where missed field goals or somehow you travel down there and your starting quarterback doesn't make the trip and you play backup and you're highly ranked and you choke. So that's where I think Georgia fans are just looking past Florida. Take a deep breath. Remember the past. Don't get too cocky. One game at a time, because there's been many times in the past where we've come down here and this place has been a disaster. So you need to focus on the real. Yes, Kirby Smart, the air is different than it was in the past, but one game at a time. Take care of the Gators, then focus on Tennessee. Personally, I would not be mad if Jalen Carter and A.D. Mitchell did not even play. Get them fully healthy, feel confident with themselves and their health, and get them ready for Tennessee in the stretch run. Um, but I think the Dogs are going to take care of business, and it's just going to be, again, eye test pass. You beat Oregon, and right now that looks like probably the best win in the country at this point. The way they beat Oregon week one, and the way it's already carried on, the way Oregon's playing. You got South Carolina a win where you beat the trash out of them. Now they're ranked. You've got to continue to pass the eye test and keep blowing people out, or at least having strong wins, and don't give the committee any doubt. And with that said, just looking at, I was sort of messing around with the ESPN playoff predictor, and sort of looking at just what if scenarios of some of the higher teams coming into the end here at this point going forward in the season. Um, if TCU wins out undefeated in the Big 12, they're 86% chance to make it in the playoff. And that's if they win out and go undefeated. And they're not even 100% chance right there. The Pac 12 is basically no shot. USC and Oregon, if they both win out and win the Pac 12 title game, they still only have a 44% chance of making it in. So basically, the Pac 12, you're already out of the playoff no matter what. Clemson, if they win out, it's a 97% chance. So maybe what happens, South Carolina might get them. Maybe Notre Dame gets them. But if they win out, they're a lock to make the playoff. And actually, I think that Clemson team will get steamrolled by anybody else who they might play in the playoff. You start looking at, let's say, Georgia and Tennessee. If Georgia were to beat Florida, but if they were to lose to Tennessee and they don't make the SEC championship game, they have a 64% chance to make the playoff. If they win out and lose in the championship game, it's a 66. Tennessee, if they lose to Georgia and don't make the title game, they have a 68% chance to make the playoff as the at large, and if a 79% chance if they win out and lose in the championship game. So Tennessee, with all the teams that are ranked in that schedule and the way they're playing, even if they lose to Georgia next week, they are almost almost guaranteed a spot to make the playoff. Very similar to Michigan, Ohio State, except Michigan's chance, if they lose to Ohio State and don't make the Big Ten title game, their strength of schedule and the way that schedule and how bad it is, it only gives them a 48% chance to make the playoff. That's why they have to blow out people and they have to beat Ohio State. Michigan is not, they are not going to the playoff even with that one loss. Now, on the other side, if Ohio State was to lose to that team up north and didn't make the Big Ten title game, their schedule and the way they've won, they would still have a 66% chance to make it. So right there, it's a big difference on just playing out your schedule, and both only really have a common opponent, a ranked of Penn State. So there are some weird scenarios there, but it's kind of looking at, you're going to have in most situations one Big Ten team, two SEC teams, and Clemson in that playoff. If everything's sort of played out as it is right now with only one loss, but as we've seen in the past, there's a lot of chaos in November and things get really weird. So you have to take it one game at a time. You have to focus on your business and don't leave it up to the committee to put you in or put you out. You need to win all your football games, control your own destiny.
So the only problem I have in that whole situation there, Fresh, is if the committee would take a one-loss SEC team that didn't make the conference title game over an undefeated Big 12 champion in TCU. That's where I start to get into where I go, okay, then why have the conference like, do they not mean anything then to us? Like, do we think that it's just better on that piece that you won like they say that it's important to win a Power Five conference. Like it's conference championships matter. So
I think that's where the strength of schedule, the ranked wins, even though TCU has 4, which gives them. I think TCU would have a better argument than a lot of other teams because they would have
right,
4 or 5 just left over Tennessee. That would be interesting though. Let's just for giggles, what if Tennessee has 1 loss, didn't make the title game, and they had the same amount of ranked wins as an undefeated conference, Big 12 champion TCU, but Tennessee had a higher strength of schedule.
I still go.
Like you start, yeah,
I
that would be a debate.
it'd be a debate, but I still go TCU for win their conference, and that's I'm glad you used that example because of the fact that I am very high on Tennessee. I think that they're a phenomenal football team. I think they're one of the best teams in the country. I have a hard time when you don't, if you're undefeated and you've won your conference, of being left out, especially with how things are working out here fresh. So I look at it this way. Let's say whoever wins Ohio State and Michigan, there you got an undefeated Big Ten champion and you got an undefeated Clemson. Both of them are in.
Locked.
Both of them are in. Whoever wins the SEC title game is in on that piece as well. Whether it's Alabama, Georgia, or Tennessee, they're in. The only
Or LSU or Ole Miss.
Ole Miss, the only thing I could see is like if something went crazy and it was a 2-loss SEC champion somehow. I think that changes the conversation. But
Yep.
let's say that let's say Georgia wins out and is the SEC champion and is undefeated. So you have 3 undefeated conference champions, and then you look at TCU, especially when all 3 other members of the playoff are undefeated conference champions. I think it becomes impossible for the committee to go, you did the exact same as everybody else, and we're going to leave you out of this playoff. Like that makes no, like to me, I would be like, this makes no sense. It's idiotic. Now, if TCU loses, different situation.
Yeah, but if they're undefeated and they keep them out, then that really tells me that they are looking at the preseason ranking of where they started, and they're going to hold that against them because they weren't higher enough ranked as the season progressed to make bigger jumps, and they're going to punish them for not being a top 25 preseason and sort of holding them back. So that's kind of where that preseason poll holds a little extra weight because if you're higher up, you don't maybe unless you have consecutive losses, you're not going to fall as far. So it's interesting scenarios to play out.
That's the frustrating thing too, because the college football playoff committee, one of the things they market themselves on is the fact that they watch every single game, that they watch all of these games, they watch all these teams play, and that they do say, do you pass the eye test? Like next Tuesday here, fresh. Would you be absolutely shocked? Let's say everything goes chalk this weekend. Georgia wins, Ohio State wins, Tennessee wins, Michigan wins, Clemson wins, Alabama wins, TCU wins. All of the top 7 teams win out. Let's not go down to Oregon yet. Would you be absolutely shocked if the football committee, not the AP voters, not the coaches, would you be absolutely shocked if the college football playoff committee put Tennessee at number 1? I don't think I'd be shocked if you're going by just the play on the field from this season. I'd be surprised. I
Well,
wouldn't be shocked.
they would have beaten that would have been their 5th ranked team they would have beaten at the time of the game.
Right.
Those are quality wins. If they weren't looking at anything else, um, I could see that as a viable option. Now, as a Georgia fan, I'd be biased and say you're defending national champion, but you should have that standard should be held to you. But you can't look at past season success and reflect it to dictate this year. But I think they're gonna keep it chalk with the AP in the USA Today poll like they have in the coaches poll and the AP poll like they always do. There's very very rarely are those different, especially early on the first or second poll.
Yeah.
So it's very very rarely you get surprises until maybe late where you start getting that separation and that splitting of hairs. But the first one, whatever that poll is going to be, you'll see the exact same on Tuesday night.
Yeah. For some reason, I just get the feeling that, for some reason, I just get this weird feeling. I think Tennessee is going to, if again everything goes, I'm starting off with a statement. Everything goes chalk for the weekend. I have a feeling with Tennessee having the 5 ranked wins, I wouldn't be shocked if the committee puts them at 1. And here's the other one, Fresh. I'll blow your mind on this one. I would not be shocked because of Michigan's strength of schedule to not see Michigan at 4. I wouldn't be shocked to see it go something like Tennessee, 2 will be either Georgia or Ohio State, 3 will be the other one. And that would be like my 1, 2, 3 go in that order. Clemson has some ranked wins. TCU has ranked wins. I wouldn't be shocked to see either one of them at 4, the other one at 5. And then you see Michigan at 6, but maybe, just maybe, because Alabama's lone loss is to the number 1 rated team, I wouldn't even be shocked to see Michigan behind Alabama just because of their strength of schedule. But I know that there's a bunch of crazy scenarios. I know we still got a lot of football left to play, and some weird things can happen. But
It's funny you mentioned Clemson because they don't play this week, but they've played 8 games so far, and they have actually played 3 teams that are currently ranked, and the combined records of all the teams they played is 34-26. They've played a very, it doesn't feel like it, but with Wake and Florida State being competitive, at least being 4-3, and Syracuse and NC State, they've actually played winning football teams. They haven't looked maybe great or as dominant or as fantastic every single week, week in and week out, but they've been consistent. And I think maybe the committee might look at that of, hey, they've ranked wins, they've beaten a bunch of winning football teams. I don't think they can punish them for having a quarterback change in the middle of a football game on a few occasions.
yeah, we'll have a lot to see here, Fresh. All right, Fresh, before we go and close out this episode, it's Halloween season. What's your favorite Halloween candy?
Unlike Dan Orlovsky, Reese's peanut butter cups all day and 10 times on Sunday.
Skittles or Dots for me always, man. I always like the chewy stuff.
Too much sugar.
Do you like to look at the sugar that's in a Reese's peanut butter cup?
It doesn't taste like I'm chugging sugar from a stick. It tastes like pure chocolate and peanut
I'm
butter.
not saying
Absolutely
I'm
amazing.
eating pixie sticks
Hey,
here.
candy corn. Yay or nay?
Yay, but I have a limitation on it. Like I don't like I. It's not one of those like once I have it, I'm good. I just want like a handful of it, and then afterwards, I'm like, okay, I'm done. I don't need a
Okay,
bunch.
that makes sense.
I just need like one like handful of candy corn. I'll be happy for it. I like the candy corn pumpkins more than I like the candy
And do you hand out full size candy bars? And then side question: do you hand out adult treats for adults that come by with their kids and pick up stuff? You give them a little snack.
So I don't do full size candy bars because that stuff's expensive and I'm not on that type of budget yet. But one year I did have a cooler for adults that if they wanted to partake that they could I
Refresh themselves.
they could have a refreshment, and that was fun, always fun. Parents really enjoyed that, so I'm looking forward to it. I'm taking my son trick or treating this year because we actually found out we'll be doing a joint costume. So you'll have to follow us on Twitter. I might have to post a picture of that one because it's actually pretty creative. But make sure you follow the Irrational Confidence Podcast on Twitter. Remember, we are part of Spinnable Sports, so make sure you're going to spinnablesports.com. Yep, that is spinnablesports.com. We got a bunch of different stuff that's starting to go up there on the website. Like, subscribe wherever you get your podcast from, whether Apple, Spotify, Good Pods, Stitcher, Amazon Pods, Google Pods. There's a bunch. I don't even know, folks. But wherever you get your podcast from, like, subscribe, leave us that 5-star review because Fresh and I, we're those 5-star prospects. If you're watching this on the YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe to that. Hit that notification bell so you know that we're going to be sending out 2 episodes a week during college football season. Got a bunch of great interviews over there, so make sure you're checking all that stuff out. Special thanks to our producer, Drew. Those of you who are going down, you're not going down. Are you going down to the cocktail party, Fresh?
We'll see. Still looking to see if tickets are the right price. We'll always play a game time decision.
Yeah, just make sure you don't get on the Weather Channel. But if you're down at the cocktail party, our good buddy Adam is tailgating down there. Always a fun time. He was definitely the one who took me there to the Georgia Florida game for the first time. So who knows? We'll maybe have to send pictures of Fresh and I out from the Georgia Florida. But Folks, it's a great weekend of college football. This is one of the best weekends until rivalry week at the end of the season. Lock yourself in. Let's enjoy it and have fun. It's a little bit longer of an episode, but hey, definitely worth it.
Great weekend. Brown water's ready. I'm stoked. Let's go. Bye, y'all.